Hello and welcome to Catholic Unscripted. I'm Catherine Bennett.
I'm Mark Lambert.
I'm Gavin Ashton.
Welcome to any new viewers. If you haven't yet checked out our website, please go to catholicunscripted.com and don't forget to look at our membership options, including at silver and gold level. You will be able to pick up daily news commentary from the great Dr. Gavin Ashenden and some exclusive blogs from Mark Lambert. Well, today we're going to talk about Archbishop Vigano. So Vigano was Apostolic Nuncio to the United States up until 2016, and it's now Cardinal Pierre, who it famously says, "Always listen to the Pope. Maybe we still struggle," he says to the clergy, "to understand his intentions." So Cardinal Vigano was replaced by Cardinal Pierre, who's very much Pope Francis's man. Well, Archbishop Vigano is not Pope Francis's man. He said that he warned Pope Francis about the abuse that we know of Theodore McCarrick. Theodore McCarrick was rehabilitated by Pope Francis, despite being under canonical censure from Pope Benedict XVI. What happened was that, for those that aren't sure, is that Archbishop Vigano broke ties with the papacy by writing a lengthy report, didn't he, Mark, telling the truth about McCarrick and saying that Pope Francis knew about this and chose not to act. He chose to ignore it and even overrule the decision made by Pope Benedict. Then Archbishop Vigano went seemingly on something of a downward spiral, commenting on all sorts of things and making all sorts of statements. And it brings us to this day where Vigano has been summoned by the Vatican and notified that an extrajudicial penal trial against him has been initiated. And he's been accused of the crime of schism and having denied the legitimacy of Pope Francis and Vatican II. So Vigano, who was much respected, much admired in this very important role that he was given by Pope Benedict XVI, and then has had this great fall away and is now being summoned by the Vatican. What does it mean for Vigano, this summoning, Mark?
It could mean a number of things. It's interesting that they've decided to do it at this particular time, and it could be for any number of reasons. It could just be that the wheels of the machine in Rome grind very slowly, but he does seem. I think the initial response from myself was, well, it seemed, I'm amazed that he got away with it for this long, really, because he's been speaking out. The initial report was way back in 2018. So if you look at the way that Pope Francis's machine has acted against Bishop Strickland, for example, or Bishop Fernandez, the guy in Puerto Rico he removed without any canonical process, then it's been a long while coming, this thing with Vigano. And Vigano's been very outspoken, and it's kind of one of those things where a lot of people have said, well, he was okay with the process up until the point that Pope Francis was appointed. And that's as a result of the fact that he's sort of now coming out against Vatican II and, saying there's lots of things wrong with the way that things are run at the Vatican, which is, he was part of that machine up until that point. But I think he has directly answered that himself, where he's kind of said that everyone's got a tipping point, and he was trying to change things from within the machine, if you like. And then he just got to the point where he felt that that wasn't possible anymore. And perhaps the McCarrick thing was the thing that broke, the last straw that broke his back, the camel's back, where he basically, he'd spoken to Pope Francis, and warned him about the sanctions that were imposed on McCarrick by Pope Benedict XVI. But Pope Francis, despite of that, chose to repeal them. And then we know that what happened from them was that McCarrick his crimes came to light, and he was laicized, etc. from there. So it's interesting that the Pope seems to have completely got away without any criticism for those, among a number of other things. And the really interesting thing for me is that you've got Vigano being charged with these things, and as you said rightly, he's made some, he's taken some interesting positions, which we would perhaps distance ourselves from. It does, some of the stuff seems to be a bit loopy that he's been coming out with. And I think there's a broad swathe of Catholics who would agree with that. And even though his first thing that he said, the first testament that he put out was an 11-page testament, which it was absolutely dynamite, and contained a lot of really important revelations. But since then, as you said, he's come out with all kinds of, it was like he had to put something out on everything for a little while. But that being said, is this the time now, in an environment where we've got Zanchetta and we've got Rupnik, we've got all kinds of abusers who seem to get free rein in the Vatican, where we get good prelates who are sanctioned without mercy. And so in that context, I think you have to ask yourself, is this anything more than a political point scoring game? Is it a politically charged attack on Vigano? The other considerations within that then are, has there been a cat and mouse game going on where the Vatican was worried that Vigano had some further revelations? He knows, obviously having been a nuncio, he knows where the bodies are buried. And have they been waiting for him to come out with these new revelations? And the fact that they're going for him now, does that say that they're no longer worried about that? Are they no longer worried about the fact that, maybe he's got some information that he hasn't released yet? You could also say that the Vatican is actually defending itself by attacking the Archbishop, and it could be like an attempt to convince the public that the allegations that Vigano's put forward are completely worthless. Two of them, the most public, are really quite serious. And we've been calling on the Vatican to excommunicate. So, like in the USA, they've been calling on the Vatican to excommunicate Joe Biden for years for his position on abortion without any joy whatsoever. Yeah. And Rupnik can perform all kinds of incredible abuse, which is well documented and seems to be able to get away with it scot-free. So I'd say in that environment, we have to say, I'd kind of back Vigano until the Vatican sorts its life out, really.
Well, I think that is exactly the problem, the point, that we have the schismatic behaviour of the German bishops with the synodal Weg, and then Bishop Strickland was so publicly removed, and his Vigano has been summoned. And it's about consistency, isn't it? It's, well, why this? Okay, we can discuss whether this was the right decision or not, and I'll come to Gavin in a minute for that. But at the very least, why isn't it equitable? If it's going to be on one side or against certain people, why not others who are clearly behaving in a schismatic way? What was Vigano's response? Just quickly, Mark. What was his response to this?
He came out very strongly against it and said it was a badge of honour. So he seems to be. He's only had a short amount of time, a week, to prepare his defence, which seems like that a preordained sort of result is already in the pipeline. And the direct quote from him is, "It's no coincidence that the accusation against me concerns the questioning of the legitimacy of Pope Francis, Jorge Mario Bergoglio." He always calls him Jorge Mario Bergoglio,
which is one of the problems, isn't it? Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Well, and he's written a treatise on, a document on whether Catholics can call Pope Francis, whether they can call Bergoglio Pope Francis or not. So, it's obvious that, and that's basically what his defence is, that, to go on and quote him, to say the moral and liturgical cancer of which the Bergoglian synodal church is necessary metastases, is what he wrote in his defence. So, he's got some really good
right thing to say, Mark.
Sorry, yeah. It's quite late now. Gavin's absolutely been Herculean 2 hours with Taylor Marshall earlier tonight, so he's getting close to my bedtime.
Brilliant.
Yeah, well done, Gavin. But I think that Vigano, you can say, you can write him off because he said some funny things, but a lot of the stuff he says, is really important. And I think this is, it's an important moment. Why are they doing this? And why aren't they, exactly as you say, why don't they excommunicate a few Germans? We'd all like to see that, wouldn't we?
Exactly. I can't help but think when you look at the trajectory of Archbishop Vigano that there's something of the enemy about the way he has ended up, I suppose, because you can see this sometimes in people who speak up for truth, not just in the church, but then they go sort of tip way too far and say something utterly wacky, and it totally discredits them. And you think, well, hang on, there was a nugget of truth in that. There was something really important in that. But because of this thing they've said, it's been totally discredited. And I kind of feel like we're in danger of losing the very important things that Archbishop Vigano has said, and the truth that he has tried to expose, and the good that he has tried to do, because of the way that it has then unravelled and the way in which we've seen his more recent behaviour. But Gavin, first of all, thank you very much, because you are joining us after a 2-hour epic with Taylor Marshall, and you must be very tired. But I want to ask you, do you think this was the right decision by the Vatican? It didn't happen before Strickland, although this business with Archbishop Vigano has been known about and rumbling on for a number of years, but it's happened now. Do you think they're right to summon him and make these charges of schism and denying the legitimacy of Pope Francis and Vatican II against him?
I think there are two questions in your single question. One is, do they have a case for him to answer? And there is a case for him to answer. He's certainly broken his relationship with the Pope. But should they have proceeded against him?
Just a bit closer to the mic if you can,
no.
Gavin.
I'll bring it much closer. Let me start again then.
I just knocked myself in the face with mine.
Well, as we can all do.
Trying to demonstrate.
Oh, I see. You were trying to get me to bring. I'm so sorry. Yeah. I missed it.
And I whacked myself.
Okay. Let's start again. 3, 2, 1. There are two questions in the question you asked. One is, do they have any just cause to make him accountable? They do. He's certainly broken his relationship with the Pope. So the rules are they allow him to accuse. They're allowed to accuse him of doing what he's done. Should they have done it politically? Did it make any sense? Well, I think that's what we're going to have to find out. They've obviously decided it's worth the risk, so they will know things that we don't know. I think someone described Vigano as being strident and increasingly erratic. And I think I'd probably want to make a distinction between prophecy and politics. Politically, he's made life... he could have put political pressure on Pope Francis, but by going the full prophetic hog, that's probably not a very helpful phrase, by speaking so with such prophetic energy, he's made himself inaccessible to a lot of us. So I think up to about 2 years, I was a huge fan of his. But he's taken his campaign against the deep state and against the New World Order. And if you're going to have a prophetic voice like that, you probably can't take on everybody all at the same time. And I think therefore he's made it more difficult for us to be sympathetic to him. It's not that he's wrong, but I think he's gone about being right in a way that makes him inaccessible to a lot of people. And maybe the Vatican feel that he's simply gone too far, become too eccentric, and lacks kind of ordinary support. And they think now they can close him down. But the problem is, whenever you make a martyr of someone, and apparently the process they've initiated can end up with him being either excommunicated or laicized or both. If they do proceed in that direction, they will make him a martyr. And I guess they've probably decided that he's a martyr they can live with. I'm not sure he is a martyr they can live with. I think with all the tensions of schism that are around, as far as we know at the moment, I think they've made a decision that will rebound on them, and it won't help. It won't help Vigano. It won't help the Pope. It won't help the Church. It will strengthen the tensions that are leading towards potential schism.
That's an excellent point. I totally agree. That's the risk that they're running, really, is pushing him into open schism. And then, you're going to get more division in the church, aren't you? So it doesn't seem like a very wise course of action. But
well, except because the Pope did say sometime, he warned us, didn't he, 3 or 4 years ago, that there might come a point when schism was needed or necessary. I mean, it was a very odd thing for a Pope to say, the centre of unity. And we all said to ourselves, does he have a plan to initiate schism? Is he going to push his enemies too far so that this happens? And if he did have a plan, well, this will be a way of initiating it, wouldn't it?
Yeah. So to you, Mark, I think we can get from what you said already, but if you want to add anything, do you think this was the right decision to summon Archbishop Vigano now?
I really, like as we said, I think that there are two strategies that are in tension, and one of them is the fact that if they're attacking him, it makes it look like they're not scared. It makes it look like that his accusations are worthless. So that's one side of it. But obviously it runs a massive risk of pushing the whole church, really, because he set up this thing, Exsurge Domine or something, doesn't he, where he's canvassing for funds and one thing another. So he's already sort of set himself out as a bit separate, if you like. So, for the most interesting part of it for me is this anti-Vatican II thing, which to lay everything at the feet of Vatican II, did he go along with Vatican II while Pope Benedict was in charge with the hermeneutic of continuity? So you had, JP2 and Benedict XVI, and everything was fine. And now you've got, as we've said many times, Pope Francis does seem to be openly promulgating the hermeneutic of rupture. That it's very difficult to see it any other way. I mean, there's not a lot of theology there, but what sort of theology there is seems to be saying that the church, before Vatican II, was one thing, and we've broken with that now, and we've got this new synodal, whatever you want to, church of dialogue and accompaniment and all this kind of thing, where we have one understanding of what the faith means in Germany. We've got another understanding in Rome. We've got another, and all those different ideas can exist somehow in tension. And in a way, that was sort of furthered by the recent ecumenical document, which was just issued, which had no magisterial value, but seemed to be a study document along that sort of trajectory, which was basically saying, that we have to have a different understanding of what it means to be the Pope, and different Christians can think. And I just think that is, we know how that ends. It ends in Protestantism. It's the opposite of Catholicism, which is a point of unity, as Gavin just said, which is the Holy Father. And we can see how, even if you put it up against Orthodoxy, you've got this ethnic, solid sort of polyschismatic entity where you've got different beliefs cut along very much along ethnic lines, and they don't agree with each other. They disagree with each other. And the Catholic model is what's worked for 2,000 years. That's been the point of unity. And all the other churches have looked at the Catholic Church because of that orthodoxy, and they've measured their own orthodoxy against that. And now you're in a situation where you've got them peeling off. The ones who were in unity with us are peeling off because the Pope is saying crazy things like fiducia supplicans. So what I'm saying is, you can see where all this is coming from. You can see why there are these problems, but the Pope really isn't he's just fanning the flames. It's no good banning the Latin Mass and doing all these draconian things while you're issuing documents about the fact that the Pope isn't really important. What is the only papacy that's important? Pope Francis' papacy, and then after that we're going to forget all about the Pope, and he's just going to be the Bishop of Rome, one bishop among bishops or something. I mean, if you talk about one among many, or the private. That's the Anglican model. So, and look how well that's all working out for them. It doesn't. None of it makes an awful lot of sense to me.
No. Yes, Gavin.
Oh, I want to say, well, I've had a thought which I'd like to share. I wonder what Vigano's end game is. If I was Vigano and I was frustrated and angry and upset, and I had a clear sense that the things I was saying was true, I've always thought one useful question in any moment of tension and difficulty is, what is your intended outcome? What does Vigano intend to help the Church towards as he criticizes the Pope? Because the problem with the strategy he's taken is he's become so extreme in, well, let's use the word strident and eccentric. He's become strident and eccentric in a way that makes it quite difficult for people like us who might have been sympathetic to a prophetic insight to follow him. And so what was he hoping to achieve? After all, he's not going to stir the laity up into schism as things are now. He's clearly not going to stir cardinals and bishops up, unless what he's hoping to do is to create an atmosphere in which people acknowledge the Pope publicly, but privately have conversations that are difficult. But to do that, you'd have to criticize with some degree of sophistication. And I think the difficulty I find with Vigano is that he's lacked this sophistication, so that people are calling him strident and eccentric. So I wondered really what it would be very nice, and perhaps Taylor Marshall will ask him, I'm sure he'll interview him, what his intention was. What did he intend to happen?
Well, this is where what I was speaking about earlier comes in. I think you think of the screw tape letters. I'm sure there's a chapter, I can't think of the exact wording, in the screw tape letters where he says, look, just get them to care. It doesn't matter what they care about on one single issue, and focus in on it and be extremely obsessed with this and be right wing. We don't care if they're right wing or left wing, but as long as they're focused on that. And it seems that's what I was saying. I can sense something where that he might have been got at, so that you say, what's his intended outcome? I think the intention was probably far clearer 5 years ago, 6 years ago, and it's become less clear because of this. It seems that there's a lack of balance, perhaps, that a necessary balance, which is difficult, of course, in the current conditions with the current papacy, but that he's being prevented somehow, and it's that discrediting that goes alongside that. So I wonder if there's some of that. But it is a crazy situation to find ourselves in, isn't it? Just looking at the whole picture, we're talking about Vigano. Just a couple of weeks ago, we hear about accusations personally against Pope Francis for wiretapping for the London property that was bought by the Vatican. We hear, Rupnik's art is being used at Pentecost, and he's been accused of these horrific abuses against nuns, and the German synodal way schismatic, and we hear milquetoast stuff from Pope Francis. We strip away Strickland. He puts in Cardinal Pierre, who's a yes man. It sounds like a sort of Father Alexander Lucy Smith novel. It's kind of like these. It does, doesn't it? And it's crazy to think we're talking about the Vatican, we're talking about the papacy, and I'm sorry to say, we've said it before, though, it's tyrannical. It seems just tyrannical, which it shouldn't be.
There's a huge juxtaposition between what the Pope says and what the Pope does. And I think that's been the case for the whole 11 years of this papacy. And it's the most obvious thing to me throughout the whole, affair. And it's deeply, deeply distressing. And it's deeply distressing for me because no one seems to be able to do anything about it. And, I don't really understand how it's allowed to go on, because it is, like you say, it's been going on throughout the whole 11 years, but it's just chaos. Like it seems very much that there's no cohesion. There's all like contradictory things being said by different people all the time, and things going wrong. And, as Damien Thompson said in his Unheard article, it's like the reality is not that he's a cunning master Machiavellian figure or anything like that. He's just like some old duffer going around lighting fires and desperately trying to put them out again. And that doesn't seem to be like, look at the recent slur that he made to the Italian bishops, and then he apologizes for it, and that which sort of contradicts the initial comment contradicts his his sort of trajectory up until that point. Then he apologises for it. Then he does it again about a week later, and then he's got Jim Martin in there say,
Yeah, but it's always we've noticed that it's always about, we'll say that, and then so that you can overextend the other way. Well, okay, we've really upset the gay community, so now we have to justify this thing to support LGBT rights and elevate James Martin. And I'm still torn, I know, between the extent to which it's done intentionally or just, as you say, kind of accidentally and carelessly. Sorry, Gavin, you were going to come in.
I was thinking that one of the things, when you say what can be done about this, the fact is nothing can be done about this because you can't dethrone a pope, you can't censure him. What's our purpose in criticizing him? I think we do have a purpose in our commentary, and that is to say that the Pope is saying these things, but the Catholic Church teaches something else. And so what we should be doing is to saying to the laity, look, actually, the guidance you're getting from Rome, it's probably better if the popes in Rome speak less and cause less trouble. But the guidance you get is not consistent with the Catholic faith. The Catholic faith is actually this. And we're entitled to say that from the Catechism and the Magisterium. And what's happening in the Vatican is disruptive, and it's not the Catholic faith. I think we can say that. What we can't say is that the Pope should be censured, or that the Pope there's absolutely nothing literally nothing we can do about the Pope except wait for him to die. Critics recently have said, I suggested I was praying for his death. They misrepresent what I'm saying. I think we're entitled to pray to be delivered from confusion and invite the Holy Spirit to carry Pope Francis to the next place sooner rather than later. That's not malevolent or horrid. That's simply saying, Lord, would you please bring us to the next stage of the life of the Catholic Church sooner rather than later? But we're waiting for that to happen. We can't make it happen more quickly. What can we do? I think our job is to say to Catholics, don't let what's coming out of the Vatican confuse you as if it was part of the Catholic minds of the Church, because it isn't. But it's not for us to do what Vigano has done, I think, which is to get immensely steamed up and to begin to make it personal in a way that then I think diminishes the force of the criticism, because it looks as though it's a personal witch hunt against the Pope, and that's not a very helpful thing as Catholics, and it doesn't achieve anything. What can we achieve? Clarity of thought, clarity of Catholic mind, and wait until the circumstances give us a new Pope. There's nothing else that we can or should do.
Vigano was 77 when he made his initial testimony, and one of the things that he said in that was that I've not got long left. I'm going to meet the Lord Jesus soon, and I'm going to give an account. The Lord Jesus is going to say, "You knew things and you didn't say them." So I've got to give him respect for that. That he's standing up. The way that he talks seems to be that he largely, broadly, he talks with integrity on those matters, and I admire his passion. And isn't it amazing the way that it fulfills the message of Our Lady of Akita, Gavin? It's
I admire it too, but I'd like to distinguish between what he said about McCarrick, which I think was absolutely essential and really important to expose the duplicity of the Church in not handling McCarrick properly. I'd like to distinguish between that and stuff about the New World Order. It's not that he's wrong. I think he might be right. But I don't think I'm not sure it's helpful to talk about it in the way he's talked about it, because much of this is conspiratorial stuff, which may be true, but you can't easily document it. And even if and nor can you do very much about it. So that's my response, is to say, bravo, 10 out of 10 for exposing McCarrick and that scandal. But if you want to keep McCarrick in the sights, don't go off into the deep state stuff, because
it detracts from the message, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's the problem. It means that the good stuff you're saying, you lose the credibility that's required to hear that good stuff. And I think this brings us back to that quote from Archbishop Fulton Sheen, which we have often used. This is because we do see now the laity, in a way, able to speak up in a way that the good shepherds, are being hampered from. We saw what happened to Strickland, and looking back at going back some years now, Cardinal Ulay, who what you see sometimes is you see that Pope Francis seems to have something on someone. And when you have something on someone and you can use it against them, then you can get them to do your bidding. And it seems that that's happened with someone like Cardinal Ulay, who spoke out against Vigano, was quite good then later on regarding the German synodal reg. But as long as that's the way, I mean, it's awful to think that that is how things might operate. But as long as there's a system in operation where you're able to hold something against someone, and the problem is there's so much rot in the church. There's so much rot amongst the clergy, and this is what Pope Benedict XVI spoke about in his 9th station of the 2005 Stations of the Cross. And he says, Lord Adam continues to fall in your church, and the devil thinks he's won, but he won't win, and you rose up and you'll rise up again. But there is rot, undeniable, a huge amount of rot. And as long as there's that rot and someone of that mind who wants to use that rot for power, then you're going to find that happening. And so in some way, the shepherds and the priests and the bishops are hampered, where the laity aren't. And so that's why you see so many laity now stepping up and having a voice and, doing the very best they can. Of course, we need good shepherds. But where they can't speak, hopefully we can.
Please God, yeah, I hope we can. And that's all we're doing. I hope it's come across that way this evening, that what we're doing is the same as our audience. In a way, we're looking at these things and, trying to understand them in the light of our faith. And if it comes across that we are, upset, and I think that's just as valid really as anything else, as any other sort of reaction, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, we wanted to meet tonight and discuss this, having heard the news break about this call from the Vatican. But I'm sure this is a subject that will develop over time and we'll meet together and discuss again. But for now, I think we'll leave it there for tonight. But thank you so much, both of you, especially Gavin, your great Taylor Marshall interview. So anyone here who hasn't seen that, go and visit Taylor Marshall's YouTube channel and check out a really interesting conversation between Taylor, former Presbyterian, former what do you call it in America? Episcopalian, former Episcopalian priest or vicar, and Gavin Ashenden, who you'll all know very well here. Thank you for watching. Do please remember to visit our website, catholicunscripted.com. And it would be really great if you could pick up a membership and then support our channel in that way. And hopefully you feel that's value for money when you get your 28 monthly broadcast from Gavin Ashenden for the price of 2 Eccles cakes, we decided, Gavin. 2 Eccles cakes a month, or 28 days of commentary from Gavin and a few blogs from Mark. It's got to be worth it, surely.
We did, and we need to apologise to our silver members that I've been so busy becoming famous today that I haven't given time to the news broadcast that we should have done. So we apologise for that, but we'll be back on first thing tomorrow morning. And
if Gavin can squeeze his head through the door,
which is unlikely, but I'm actually staying with part of my family in South London, and they're very, very good at reminding me of my I don't know, not my limitations. Well, families bring you down to size. So that's what they're busy doing.
We always need people to keep us humble, don't we? So anyway, we'll leave it there for tonight. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you again very soon. I'm Catherine Bennett.
I'm Mark Lambert.
I'm the new and temporarily famous Gavin Ashenden.